going on YouTube? It's your boy OG Scoot, and I am back for my third video. So today I'm going to talk to you a little bit about hypersexuality in video games and how gender roles play a huge part of video games. Along with this part of the video, I'm also going to talk to you guys a tad about how different races play in video games as well. So I'm just going to kind of cover how we see video games and how different genders, races, and all those things play a part of video games. For the second part of the video, I'm going to talk about aggression. And this part of the video is going to be a little bit harder to talk about just because it's hard to talk about the subject, I guess, without being biased. So I'm going to try to lay it out as easily as I can, what people need to know about aggression, first of all. And with the different reports that are always coming out, conflicting information about aggression, and if that leads to video game, aggression from video games leads to the real life, it's kind of tricky to cover. So I'm going to do my best, and stay tuned, and we'll see what happens. Till next time.
Let's talk about sex, baby. Let's talk about you and me. Let's talk about all the good things and the bad things that may be. Let's talk about sex. Let's talk about sex. Let's talk about sex. Let's talk about sex.
Alright guys, so let's first talk about hypersexuality in video games, along with how races can play a different aspect with a character in video games. So let's dive in with the hypersexuality part first. So when you're playing a video game, you tend to notice how big and masculine everyone looks, or well, the males look at least, and the females look like they have huge breasts and really big butts, but their waists are so skinny and it doesn't even look normal. Well, it's because it's not. And you're not the only one that thinks these things. So I want you to know that both males and females can feel objectified in video games, and it's not only an issue with males or females, but it's more glaring and obvious with the female gender in video games. So let's dive right in. 88% of main characters in video games are males compared to 12% are females. And when you really think about it, I know you can list off probably 100 different male roles for video games, such as like Mario or Luigi or people like that. It comes off the top of your head. But with female roles, it's a little more hard. The one that I can think of that's really prevalent, at least, is Lara Croft in Tomb Raider, and that's always been a big female role. But then again, you still have that over-sexualized look of her, and like big breasts and everything, and really skimpy shirt. And granted, she empowers women, and she sets a great example, but the thing is that she's still sexualized, and some people that play video games, especially women, feel like video games create this sense of objectifying women, and they're only good for their breasts or their butts or anything like that. So it really does create a rift with the player especially, but with also like the video game companies, because this is, I guess, technically the norm of video games, and it's kind of hard to just all of a sudden change that, but something needs to happen. I also want to say that there's only one female appearing for every 5.3 males present in a video game. And some people believe that the reason why males are a lot more prevalent in video games is because the video games are designed by males. And so when they're designing these video games, they try to create what they think a perfect male or a perfect female would look like. So, for example, like with the males, they'll have chiseled abs and huge biceps, and basically every muscle is just popping out of their body. And that's really not how males look in person. And well, I guess I should say in the real life. And so these males then create females, and their breasts are huge, like I've said, and their body proportions are very, very outrageous. You could almost say that they're equivalent to like what a Barbie doll would look like, and that is just not what people look like in the real world. So hypersexuality does play a huge part in video games. It's also reported that women who play a game with a sexualized female character reported less favorable attitudes towards women with regards to women's physical capabilities than did women not playing a video game with a sexualized female character. So not only is it affecting people, but it's also making female gamers more deterred of playing of a video game. And with female video games characters too, they're found more to not use weapons and stuff like that, and they're viewed mostly as like helpless, and they need a strong female or male to come save them, and kind of like what you see in Mario with Princess Peach getting abducted and screaming for Mario and stuff. And I guess this exemplifies what I'm talking about, is how the male needs to go and defeat all these bad guys to save the female. And you can see that in movies too, but it's really, really centralized in video games. And it's not probably the best plot type to use anymore. One, because it's played out, but two, it's being sexualizing women, and how they can't tend for themselves, and how they can't care for themselves, and we obviously know that it is not real. Also, it's portraying men as having to be this like superhero, and when in reality, not every man's like that. Not every man is huge with huge biceps and everything. And I mean, these images also cause males to go out and lift weights, and which is good, but it's getting to the point of obsessing and trying to look like something that they can't ever really accomplish. I mean, no one can accomplish how Duke Nukem's body style is, and granted, like people like Arnold Schwarzenegger, have gotten big and made bodybuilding a huge thing, and people want to strive to be like that, but these proportions on these characters are so unrealistic that it's not even possible to get, and it's really hurting people's like the video game players' perspective on themselves. You can see this because different male and females, they both can get eating disorders and going on a diet, and like bulimia is huge. And then with males, it's also huge that they take steroids so they can get as big as all these people. So not only is it affecting people's mental view of video games and like how characters and people are portrayed, but it's also affecting their everyday life and really their health in general, and that's not good. And video games are meant to be played for enjoyment, and as like I've covered in my other videos, but this is going beyond that, and this is trying to replicate something that can't be possible. So moving on a little bit from hypersexuality, we're going to kind of talk about how different races play a part in video games, and this is going to be really short and sweet and to the point, but women, like I've said, are usually the people that need help, and they don't really care for themselves. Like they need a big man to do it. And with males, especially white males, you see them being the more playable character, and you really don't see females being a playable character that often in a video game, especially with like avatars, creating avatars. So white males they're the hero more or less. But then you move on from the white race, and let's talk about like the African American race in video games. They're usually portrayed as living in bad environments, like Grand Theft Auto. You can see that, for example. They all grow up in the hood, and it's just really making these stereotypes not go away, and it's not really that great, especially for young video gamers, because I personally don't think that they should be thinking that this is how black people are and stuff. I mean, obviously racism is around, and it definitely needs to stop. So the first thing to stop it is probably trying to cut this out of video games, so you don't start racism early on, especially with young video gamers. Blacks are also seen to be criminals in video games, and really pretty much angry and like aggressive towards all the other characters. The aggression you can see in Halo, for instance, the chief, he's he has a big old scar and he's just angry. This is perpetuating the black stereotype as well. And for criminal activity, like I've said before in Grand Theft Auto, I mean, basically you're killing people and doing whatever, and your character is a black character, at least in Grand Theft Auto 4. So this is showing that this is normal, and it's really not. And so these stereotypes need to go away, and especially with hypersexuality, this whole thing of video games and hypersexuality really needs to be cut down, and people need to realize that this isn't normal and pretty much love themselves for who they are. People need to be happy with what they have and not focus so much on that. This would definitely help, but what really needs to happen is the game developers need to stop over-sexualizing men and women and create a more realistic view of people and how they actually look in their physical appearance. So hopefully hypersexuality and different races and stuff is more apparent to you guys, and you can look at it when you're playing your own video game.
On a few of our message boards, we've seen more than a few people raise concern over violent video games and the cultural effect of having so many young men living virtual lives as first-person shooters. So tonight, ABC's Neil Karlinski.
Well, do violent video games cause violence? It is a question that has been raised for several years, especially following mass shootings.
Is there a link between violent video games and these recurring acts of mass killing in our society? Well, the answer may not be as clear-cut as you think. Joining me.
Alright guys, well thanks for sticking around to part 2 of the video. So part 2 of the video I want to cover aggression and video games. And I was thinking to myself, this is probably going to be the hardest video I am going to make. And for a couple different reasons, I guess. Video games are sometimes violent, and people want to make a reason out of why humans in the real world do specific actions. And a lot of people do blame it on video games, and it's really hard to make this in a non-biased way and really give you guys like facts about it, because there's so many different people that are coming out with different researches and proving that it does create it or it doesn't create it, and it's really hard to get a real answer of do video games cause aggression, and do these aggressive acts, are they to blame for it, more or less? And the short answer I can really give you guys is I don't know. And that's why people are studying it still, and that's why video games are a big study of aggressive and violent acts. And it's really hard to actually give someone a definite answer on it, because things are always changing and people are always changing. And I guess my goal right now is to give you 2 different theories of aggression and kind of talk to you about them and maybe how they could apply to video game aggression and why it happens in the real world. So the first one I'm going to talk to you guys about is the excitation transfer theory. Now basically what this means is aggressive responses are intensified by arousal from other stimuli not directly related to the original stimulus, starting from the aggression. So what does that even mean? Alright, I'll try to explain it to you as simply as possible. So, I'm sitting here playing a video game, going nuts, having a good time, but I'm dying. I can't get past a level, so I'm getting really irritated at the video game, and I'm just getting frustrated, and I know you guys have felt that, where you just want to take your controller and throw it down. So I am just internally just pissed off, and I might be, cussing out loud and screaming. So I'm doing that, and let's say one of my buddies even comes in and starts throwing a pillow at my face, or trying to get me all riled up. Well, this action that my buddy did might not be something that would generally make me aggressive, but since I've already been agitated from this video game and I am all, angry and stuff from that, I might react differently to my friend than I normally would. So I have like a heightened sense of arousal, basically. And so how this could relate to video game aggression and violence is that someone's playing a video game and they get these ideas of like all this violent behavior, and they see all this. Well, what happens is like over time then, or shortly after, it doesn't really matter so much on the time, but they still have to feel this sense of arousal. So what will happen is maybe that they'll go out and actually try to replicate these things that they've seen in the video game because they're already angry and they react to a situation differently than they normally would. So that is one theory, and that is the excitement transfer theory, basically. So let's move on to another theory, and that is called the hostile attribution bias. Now, I'm going to read the definition to you, and then I'll further explain it, probably in more of layman's terms, and hopefully you guys will understand it then. But it is the tendency to interpret the behavior of others across situations as threatening, aggressive, or even both. People who exhibit the HAB, which is the hostile attribution bias, think that ambiguous behavior of others is hostile and often directed towards them, while those who do not exhibit the hostile attribution bias interpret the behavior as a non-hostile, non-threatening way. Alright, so I just threw out a bunch of lingo at you guys. So basically all this means is that someone is already more prone to be aggressive, and they, I guess, are more angry, and they're just kind of always a little upset. And so this theory is basically stating that these people are more prone to react to a situation that is deemed not threatening. So I'll give you an example. Alright, at a party, and I'm standing around and I have a beer in my hand. Now you have to picture this party. There's hundreds of people there. It's the biggest party you've ever seen, and it's crammed into this super small house. So everyone is about this close to each other, and no one can really move because there's so many people there. So I'm holding my drink, and some guy comes up and accidentally bumps me because there's so many people in this house and he's trying to get out, whatever the situation may be. But he bumps my drink, and the drink spills all over my shirt and my shoes. Now, there's two, I guess, ways to think about this situation. Oh, it's an accident. There's so many people here, like, it's bound to happen, I guess. But some people with the hostile attribution bias will react super angry, like, why would you do that to me? And they think that they're always the victim. So they're all upset that they got beer on their shirt and shoes, and they're just generally really angry about it. So what this bias really means is that people like this always want to play the victim, and after they really start the aggressive behavior. So after the beer gets spilled on someone's shirt, they might, physically altercate with the person that did it, or yell at them, either one or both. So what this could mean is that video games might not necessarily be the reason, I guess, for any violent outbursts, but what could happen is that someone that's already more apt to being angry and has, I guess, like a more inclined personality type of reacting in a negative way could take this hostility bias and blame it on a video game for their behavior, because they're the victim and they don't want to take responsibility for exactly what they've done, especially if it is a violent act. So this is how video games, I guess, could be blamed for it. And it's just it's an unfortunate thing that the video games are getting blamed for all this aggressive behavior and whatnot, because it's no one's. It's hard to really put your thumb on it, because it's so hard to actually determine what has caused different outcomes in life. So there's always going to be a pros and cons of video games and aggression, but I'm just going to read you a little excerpt of what I think is important for the argument and against the argument. And at the end, I basically want you guys to not necessarily make an opinion on it, But I want you guys to really think about it, and you know, don't necessarily blame the video games, but if you really think that is it, you know, by all means have your own opinion. But sales of violent video games have significantly increased, while violent juvenile crime rates have significantly decreased. And this is, it's increased 204% from 1994 to 2014. So video games, the violent video games have really, I mean, they've sold a bunch, like Halo, Call of Duty, all these violent things, or Mortal Kombat, for example. But, like I've said, violent juvenile acts have actually gone down. But you can also look at it as playing violent video games causes more of an aggressive bullying and fighting type of behavior, at least with juvenile males. So 60% of middle school boys and 40% of middle school girls who have played at least one mature-rated game hit or beat up someone, compared to 39% of the boys and 14% of the girls who do not play M-rated games. Now, personally, I feel like this is a big stretch, just because you're in middle school, hormones and everything, you know how that goes. But you can't single-handedly blame a video game, especially playing a mature-rated game. I mean, I feel like that is a very biased study. So let's move on to one more. The Supreme Court ruled that violent video games do not cause youth to act aggressively. So even this issue has gone up to the Supreme Court. And in Brown versus the Entertainment Merchants Association in 2011, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled 7-2 that California could not ban the sale of violent video games to minors. Now, Justice Anton Scalia wrote, in the majority of opinion that studies purporting to show a connection between violent video games and harmful effects on children have been actually rejected by every court to consider them, and with good reason. So, this issue obviously has gone to the Supreme Court, and it's obviously big enough to make a difference in a whole state about selling violent video games. But let's move on to another, I guess, pro that violent video games do cause aggression and all of this stuff in the real world. Violent video games also desensitize players to real life violence. So basically what this means is that I kill, I don't know, 100 hookers in Grand Theft Auto, and I shoot down an airplane and blow up a car with a whole family in it. Now, my thought is that it's just a video game and it's not a big deal, but after a while, this could really make me think that violence isn't that big of a deal. And because I'm so used to doing it in the video game, so I might actually act on that. And that can be, you know, put into different theories, like or the theories that I've talked about, but also the GAAM theory and a bunch of different others. So I guess what I've really learned about studying aggression and if violent video games actually have an impact on people is that maybe, but all these tests and stuff are really, I wouldn't say biased, but they're kind of grabbing at straws in a sense, at least I think. You know, playing middle school boys and girls playing mature-rated games, I think, is a very biased thing, and if that really accounts for the aggression. Also, just like, I bet, you know, a lot of people do play video games, even the older generations, they've all played video games almost. So, I mean, everyone has been affiliated with a video game or something like it their whole life, and if they haven't played it regularly, they've at least played it once. So it's hard to actually get a statistic that's reliable from saying that this person played a video game versus this person that didn't, and then they acted upon it. But I think that the majority of the population in the world has actually played a video game. So it's, like I said, it's kind of hard to relate those two topics. I don't think they really correlate a whole lot. So I'm going to end it now with saying, I don't know. I can't really tell you. I don't think the experts can really tell you. And when the experts do tell you that it does affect different people, is that they're right in a sense, or if they don't, or if it doesn't affect them, they also are right. So it's really hard to actually say who is right and who's wrong. And that's, I guess, the science of people. You know, people react to situations differently, and I guess we might not know, or we might figure it out. But like I said, for right now, I don't know, and your guess is as good as mine. So thanks for watching this video, guys. Really appreciate it. Now, if you want to hit that like and comment section and subscribe to my channel, that'd be greatly appreciated. I also upgraded this camera, so hopefully that's making a big difference in my videos. I know it's not going to make me look any better, but let's hope at least the whole quality is going to be better. So until next time, guys, it's your boy OG Scoot. Thanks for staying tuned, and see you in the next video.